All right, thank you. It's my great pleasure to be here, not only for giving this presentation, but also to to get some clear air. Back to Beijing, where I came from, and the air pollution is really a big problem. And it seems like the conference today is gonna severe air pollution over there. So it's a great chance to get some fresh air here. And my topic is about food consumption, but it seems like this topic is kind of, weird. We are always supposed to have food at home, away from home, but it seems like that's not the case in China, unfortunately, because most of the existing study which we can find from literature is they're using data which literally ignore dining out. It's just because the data which was mostly used in China and come from the official sources, they just simply has no dining out data included. As a result, the research mostly on in this area just give a picture about the food consumed at home. So this is why I put, it's nothing about the button. I didn't touch it at all. Anyway, yeah, so some background. First of all, the per capita GDP and income keep growing in China, and recent years it's slowing down, but still very high if you have an international comparison. And another big issue in China is, many rural residents are now they are migrating to urban and localized there, and which puts the urbanization rate is going going very fast in China. And in 2014, there is more than half of population in China living in urban area, and it is the urbanization ratio is forecasting to be 70 to 75% in 2030. And but China is also aging very fast. Not only it's always the case for developing country. And for example, in Japan or other countries, but however, in China, the population aging could be even faster simply because of the one couple, one child policy. So the data for this picture came from the UN forecasting, but however, of course, this data does not include the potential effect from the policy released last year. And starting from last year, China now allows a couple to have the second children, and this picture, I don't think it's including that there. And anyway, you can see by 2030, population aged than 60 will reach 25% even higher. And so China is aging. And on the food consumption side, we always use indicator which is called Unger coefficient. We can see over the past 3 decades, Unger coefficients declining in both rural and urban area, and recent years reached around 30% in both urban and rural area. But food consumption, food expenditure still remains on the top. If by other categories, followed by communication and healthcare, education, something like that. Anyway, yeah, but the Unger coefficient in China is still relatively high compared to the countries or regions which I listed here. For example, United States, Canada, Japan, South Korea, and EU countries. China still, the Unger coefficient is still very high. And those pictures gives some major agricultural products consumptions in both rural and urban. The left side is rural and right side is urban. And on the top is the first paragraph gives those pretty small, tiny. The first line gives you green, and the second red is vegetable. And down here is meat, poultry, eggs, aquatic, and fluid milk. So as you can see, one observation, a very interesting observation, is the food consumption in rural is roughly 30 years lagged of the urban consumption level. If you compare, except vegetable, and you can see the meat consumption here and the meat consumption here, it just seems like at the same level. Also, for the same observation, you can find for other commodities. But of course, this doesn't mean that today's food consumption in urban will be the case in rural 30 years later. One big difference is seems like rural China population age aging is even faster than in urban area because the rural-urban migration is mostly just young people. So left behind the more senior and senior people. So the question is, what will be the future trend for food consumption in China? And what could be the major driving forces? This study will only focusing on income and the population aging, try to see what they will affect the food consumption trend. And particularly, we're going to see if we consider food away from home, what will happen. So, but doing this kind of study in China is always a big problem. As I just mentioned in the beginning, the data is always a problem. So, just to give you an example, those pictures I gathered data and calculated both from the same resources as China statistic books, yes books, and it's for pork consumption. The blue line gives the per capita production, just simply divided by the total production by population. And the yellow lines gives the per capita consumption for pork. You can see how the big difference, we just don't know where the pork goes. Of course, China now is actually importing pork. It's the international trade is a very small proportion. So it's not, we just don't know where the pork goes. And of course, there are a lot of other explanations, including food waste, including different date measurements. Anyway, I think one of another reason is because just as I mentioned, the ignored dining out is a big problem. And so what we did is we collected some data back to 2010 to 2012. In 3 years, we did a survey in 9 cities, which gives us 1,800 households. The survey was conducted by a diary measured. It's lasted for 7 days, and so far, by my knowledge, this is the maybe not the only, but just one of the few studies using 1 week-long survey. Most of the data in the literature is just 1 day or 3 days, and recording something like that. And we also, survey we collect detailed information about the demographics and the food consumption information. So here is the city. Geographic location is quite good, and one amazing thing we done for this study is try to get information for dining out. It's not that easy. It's actually very tough, and because if you ask the respondent to tell you how much meat I eat, it seems like impossible. So the way we ask them is just what kinds of dishes did you eat? Did you order? And we record the name and let them describe the size of the portion. And we then translate these dishes into commodities, by developing some converting database, and which including the cooking books and the serving chefs, and to get information all the ingredients. For example, you have mapo tofu, many people, and we try to know how much meat there and how much tofu and how beans or veggies, the dishes. That's not easy because China is huge. The dishes in components could be different region by region and also by the venues. So we need to get a huge databases, by region, by region and by venue format. So that's the things. The database we have right now is allowed us to convert all the dining out food consumption, also including the purchased food, eat at home, into 79 different commodities in very detail. So that's the things amazing things I did. And of course, cost a lot of time. And so some descriptive results. Per capita food consumption in our survey. Here is just a comparison between our survey estimates and the NBS, the National Bureau of Statistics, and the data is reported for urban household. As you can see, for almost all the commodities listed here, grain, meat, eggs, aquatic, vegetable, fruits, and dairies, our survey is much, much higher than the level reported by the NBS. And see, this one in the region tells the big difference, the big reason for the differences between our survey and the NBS came from the dining out. The blue bars gives the shares of the dining out by category. See, for meat, it's 28% of meat in volume terms. and was consumed away from home. And for green eggs and aquatic, roughly about 20% of vegetable fruits and dairy is a little bit lower, but still has a significant proportion. And so that basically means if we ignore, like literature or the official data, if we ignore food away from home, could lead to a very different story. For example, this is meat consumption. If we consider meat, only consider meat at home, we saw with the income increases, so horizontal gives the income quantile, and it shows as the income increases and the meat consumption will go up, but eventually will go down. But if we include in dining out together, combine them together, we saw even for the highest income group, meat consumption, average in our sample is 78 kilos per year. It still seems like a ratio. So this is not only for meat, but also for other commodity, including like grain, including vegetable, and aquatic, a lot of other products. That basically tells the rule, the very important rule of dining out in evaluating the food consumption and the food security in China. And a little bit more detailed information is by venue. We can see the restaurants is leading in terms of expenditure for dining out, but fast food outlets and some dining halls like run by the employee and or the work unit, which also are evenly important as restaurants in terms of quantity consumed. We also, as I said, we also have some demographic information, so we are able to see what kinds of differences we can see for food consumption by family comparison. And as we can see from this table, the more senior in the family and the meat consumption is much lower. The young people, young household, and has a very high meat consumption. And so doing some, just some statistical results, but let's go back to, take some demand system. And what we did is we estimate a quadratic edge model, and which, as most of you guys already know, the quadratic edge model is the only difference is from the edge model. Traditionally used edge model is added a quadratic expenditure items over there, which I will not go to details. But one problem we are facing is facing uncensored problem in our survey. Our survey already covered 7 days, but still we see a lot of food, particularly if we break it down to more details, we saw a lot of observations has zero consumptions, which econometrically speaking, if we're not dealing with this problem, we're going to have the bias estimation. So not only for this censored problem in this table, I want to say, one interesting thing I want to show is, for example, for green, this is the food at home, this is the food away from home. And going in detail is the meat at home, meat away from home. And we see green meat, of course, is mostly consumed. Just a few households, they did not report green meat consumption in the week. But for aquatic and particularly dairy, you can see there is near 1/3 of the household in our household actually they did not report any milk consumption, even at home. And this is talking about household level. If you go to individual level in China, we actually have more than 50% of consumers, they did not report any milk consumption in the week we did a survey. So that's pretty interesting. And of course, it's a difference by different age group. And for dining out, it is even small numbers household report dairy consumption, and aquatic. Anyway, because of that, to dealing with this censored problem, we use the two-step estimator. This is developed by the Sankuela and Yang back to 1999, and the basic idea is to have the model as a two-step. The first step try to estimate whether or not the household consuming each specific products, and the second conditional on the and you can estimate the CDF or PDF from the first stage, then plus both variables into the second stage, so that you can get an unbiased estimate. So I will not go to details here. So we estimate the two models. The first one I call the first stage is the food demand system, in which we have 6 commodities, which include grain, meat, aquatic, vegetable, fluid milk, is equivalent, and others. But in the system, we estimate 12 equations because we treat each commodity as 2 commodities. For example, for green, green at home is one equation. Green away from home is the second equation. So together we have 12 equations in the system. And the second stage of estimated meat demand system is also, we have 4 meat products: pork, beef, poultry, and other meats. And it's also including 8 equations to treat meat away from home and at home differently. Here is some results. And the estimated expenditure elasticity from the first stage. As we can see, this is the conditional elasticity. As we can see from the first row, which is for food at home, green has a inelastic. Expenditure elasticity is inelastic, and meat is it's just unitary. And shift the vegetable and fluid milk is also lower than 1, but for seafood and vegetable, it's higher than 1. That means with the expenditure for food increases, and meat, actually seafood, vegetable goes faster than food expenditure grows. We also estimate the model by income group. So this one gives the income group from the lowest quarter to the highest quarter. You can see the expenditure elasticity slightly goes down with the income increases. This is as expected. Another thing I wanted to mention is, the second half of the table gives us the expenditure elasticity for food away from home. As we can see, correspondingly, the expenditure elasticity for away from home is higher than at home for all the commodity and for all income groups. And so we turn it into income elasticity, which basically just time the food expenditure elasticity with respect of income. And the income, all right. So the income elasticity are so different, much more different across income groups, and none of them is greater than 1. Actually, most of them for grain, meat, and seafood, vegetable, fruit, milk, actually is quite close to 0. Actually, and if we only look at the highest income group and the second high income group, actually the income elasticity almost becomes 0. That basically means if any food consumption increases in the future in China, it's mostly came from lower income group. And also, it's for income elasticity for away from home is higher than at home. And for meat, because I got a topic is for meat and dairy, so I will give a little bit more times on meat. So we also estimate the second demand system, which is within meat demand, and we have pork, beef, poultry, and other meats. So as we can see, with the income increases, expenditure elasticity also goes in down, and this is conditional elasticity goes in down, and seemingly we can find for meat away from home, and again turn it into income elasticity. We can see except the lowest income group for meat away from home, which has higher than 1 income elasticity for beef, poultry, and other meat. All other elasticities are less than 1. And that means with the income increases, animal products consumption is still positively and growing, but the growth rate is lower than income growth rate. And we have some own price elasticity, and which, because of time, I will not go to details. And another thing I want to highlight is the demographic effect, which shows as for middle-aged people and have a positive elasticities for meat consumption, but for senior people after the 50 or 60 older, and it becomes a negative elasticity. That means the population aging may have a negative effect on meat consumption. Again, also for food away from home. And we try to use this elasticity to forecast the meat consumption in China by holding other factors unchanged. we find the predicted meat demand in China in 2030 will be overestimated by more than 5 million tons if we are not considering the population aging. And of course, this is, all right, I'm done. Okay, this project, this is a projection, and does not, sorry, it's a typo over there. This projection does not consider meat tolerance, which I call tolerance is because, some literature says, recent senior people in China now eating less meat than young people. It's not because they are aged. It's just because they did not eat that much meat when they were young. So today for young people, we eat a lot of meat. We make more meat tolerant when we become older and still able to eat much more meat than today's senior. So of course, the forecasting, we did not consider this factor. So this picture is probably, one more minute. Okay, so I took this picture like 3 years ago when I was in Davis and with Michael Carter, it's a very famous economics guys, and here is his mother-in-law, and the year I was there, I took the picture was she was 92, and the three of us, we have some wine, very nice wine, and also has the steaks. I got a lamb. Michael get beef, and her mother got 12-ounce meat, and finished. So I'm thinking if every Chinese elderly can eat as much as her mother-in-law, what will happen? Could be anyway. Okay, just to summarize. Okay, income elasticity for almost all food products are positive, but very, very small. And particularly if we're talking about the high-income group, it's close to zero. That means if the income increases, the meat consumption will increases, but not came from the richer people, but from the relatively poor people. And also the increasing came from the eating out, happens away from home, not at home. And I'll quick summary because of time. And one thing I did not mention, but at the same time, so we know the population aging plays negative roles, by assuming the toleration problems. And also, one thing I want to highlight, because I did not give anything about dairy consumption, per capita milk consumption in China is not increasing. Per capita is not increasing as fast as many people expected. But the total milk demand in China will dramatically increase. This is mostly because of the new young generations. And almost all young people, they are eating milk now. They are drinking milk. And if you go to the senior people, like aged 50 or above, the proportion of consuming milk is very, very small, very low. But the young generation is very high, this proportion. Remember, this is the only urban story. We have no information about rural. That's all. Thank you.